3 weeks after she buried her husband, Camille Washington went into the basement to start sorting through his things. She was not ready. She knew she was not ready. But the boxes had been sitting there since the day after the funeral, when her sister Denise had brought everything up from the garage and stacked it neatly against the wall. And every morning Camille walked past the basement door and thought, not today. And every night she went to bed knowing tomorrow she would have to start. She had a system. She was always going to have a system. 11 years of marriage to a man who kept things organized had not changed the fact that Camille Washington had been organized long before she met him. 3 boxes: keep, donate, let go. She brought the boxes down the stairs at 9 in the morning on a Saturday with a cup of coffee she was already forgetting to drink. She saw the safe before she saw anything else. It was behind the water heater, set back into an alcove she had never looked at closely because there had never been any reason to. Gunmetal gray, the size of a large suitcase, the kind of safe that was bolted to the concrete floor. She stood in the basement with her coffee cup in her hand and looked at it for a long time. She had never seen it before in her life. She set down the coffee. She walked across the basement. She crouched in front of the safe and looked at the combination dial. There were scrape marks on it, the specific kind that come from repeated use, from someone who knew the combination and had turned that dial many times. The door was not fully closed. She pulled it open. Empty. Not empty like it had never been used, empty like it had been cleared out. There was a faint outline in the felt lining where something rectangular had sat for a long time, a box or a stack of something, or both. A small hook on the interior door where a key had hung. The hook was empty too. Camille sat back on her heels in her basement on a Saturday morning 3 weeks after her husband's funeral and understood, with the specific clarity that comes from 11 years of professionally following money that people believed they had successfully hidden, that she had just found the beginning of something. She did not panic. She did not cry. She took out her phone and took 12 photographs. Then she called her sister. This is what Camille Washington found when she started looking. This is what it cost the people who believed that love would make her stop. Stay with her, because what she finds is not just about the money. It is about who knew, and who said nothing, and how long. If you are watching this for the first time, welcome to Shattered Crown Stories TV. Every story on this channel is original. Every ending delivers justice, and every woman in these stories finds out exactly what was done to her and makes sure it cost something. If that is the kind of storytelling you have been looking for, hit subscribe right now, because Camille's story is just beginning, and what she finds in that basement is going to change everything you think you know about the man she buried. Stay with her. We are just getting started. Camille was in a client meeting when her phone vibrated for the 3rd time in 4 minutes. She excused herself. The number was the gym, the one Marcus went to every Wednesday and Friday morning before work. She answered in the hallway outside the conference room with her notepad still in her hand. The man on the phone said he was the gym manager. He said there had been a medical emergency. He said they had called 911 and the paramedics had responded, and he was so sorry, but she needed to come to Grady Memorial Hospital right away. Camille asked one question: is he alive? The man paused for exactly 1 second too long. She was already walking toward the elevator. She drove to Grady Memorial in 12 minutes in traffic that should have taken 25. She parked in the wrong lot and walked the wrong direction and had to be redirected by a security guard who took one look at her face and walked her there himself without asking why. The doctor in the cardiac unit met her at the door of the family waiting room. He had the specific, careful posture of a physician who has had to say the same thing many times and has not found a way to make it easier.
Marcus Washington had experienced a massive cardiac event at 7:43 a.m. There had been no warning signs. There was nothing that could have been done differently. He had not survived. Camille sat down in the chair the doctor indicated. She sat there for a long time. She thought about the coffee she had made him that morning, his in the blue mug, hers in the white one, the way she had done it every morning for 11 years. She thought about how he had kissed her on the cheek on his way out and said he would pick up dinner on the way home. She thought about the fact that she had said okay without looking up from her laptop because she was already reading a report. She had not watched him leave. She had not looked up. She did not know yet about the safe. She did not know yet about the $4,200 a month. She did not know yet about Simone, or about Eugenia, or about the 6 years of a life her husband had been running in parallel to the one she thought they were building together. She was just a woman who had lost her husband. That was all she knew yet. People came. That was what happened when someone died. People came. Denise arrived at the hospital within 40 minutes. She did not ask questions, and she did not say the wrong thing, which was what Camille needed most. She sat beside her sister in the waiting room and held her hand, and when the doctors came back with paperwork, she handled the paperwork. When it was time to go home, she drove Camille's car and called their mother from the passenger seat and said only what needed to be said. Marcus's mother, Eugenia, arrived at the house that evening. She came through the front door and held Camille for a long time without speaking. She smelled like the cocoa butter she had used for as long as Camille had known her. She sat at the kitchen table and drank the tea Camille's mother made and cried quietly and steadily for 2 hours. Camille watched her mother-in-law cry and felt, underneath everything else, grateful. Eugenia had always been a good mother-in-law, present without being intrusive, warm without being performative, the kind of woman who showed up when it mattered and stepped back when it didn't. She thought about this later. She thought about it a great deal. 11 years. They had been married 11 years. They had met at a professional conference in Birmingham. She was presenting on forensic accounting methodology. He was attending for his financial planning firm, and he had come to her session specifically and asked 3 sharp questions, and then found her at the reception afterward and said he had one more question that wasn't about accounting. She had laughed. She had not expected to laugh. They were married 14 months later. They bought the house in Cascade Heights 3 years after that. They had talked about children. It was a conversation they kept returning to, not urgently, with the particular patience of 2 people who believed they had time. They were not in a hurry. They had each other. They had their work, their Saturday mornings, their routines. Camille made the coffee. Marcus fixed things. They took one trip every year, always somewhere they had never been. This was the marriage she was burying. She did not yet know it was the marriage she was about to excavate. 214 people came to Marcus Washington's funeral. Camille counted them the way she counted everything, not obsessively, but because counting was how her mind stayed anchored when the rest of her was underwater. 214. Colleagues, clients, the youth basketball team he had coached for 3 years, 12 boys between the ages of 9 and 13 who sat in the 4th row in their good clothes and looked bewildered in the specific way of children who have encountered death for the first time and cannot yet hold its full shape. Eugenia sat in the front row beside Camille. She held Camille's hand through the eulogy. She spoke herself, briefly, composed, and said that Marcus had been her greatest accomplishment and her greatest joy, and that she was grateful he had found a woman worthy of him. Camille thought about those words later. She thought about all of Eugenia's words later. After the burial, after the reception, after the last car had left, and Denise had washed the dishes, and their mother had gone to the guest room, Camille sat alone in the living room in the dark. She did not turn on the lights. She sat with the particular silence of a house that has just become one person smaller, and she let herself feel the full weight of it. She was not a woman who postponed things. She was not a woman who looked away. She had built an entire career on the principle that the truth was always findable if you were willing to follow it past the point where other people stopped looking. She did not know yet that she was about to apply that principle to her own life. She went to bed at midnight. She slept 4 hours. She woke at 4 and lay in the dark on what had been Marcus's side of the bed and thought about nothing in particular and everything at once. 3 weeks later, she went into the basement.
The safe was a Sentry Safe HDC-11, rated for fire and water, bolted into the concrete floor with industrial anchors. Camille knew the model because she photographed the serial number and looked it up while she was still crouching in front of it. Retail price, $340. Installation, professional. The safe had been here long enough to collect a faint line of dust along the seam where the door met the frame, except where the door had been opened and closed, where the dust was disturbed in a pattern that told her the safe had been accessed recently, within the last few weeks, possibly within the last few days. She was a forensic accountant. She thought in evidence. She took 12 photographs, the safe from 4 angles, the serial number, the scrape marks on the combination dial, the interior showing the outline in the felt lining, the empty hook, the anchor bolts in the floor. She thought about who had known this safe was here. She thought about who had a key to this house besides herself. The answer was one person. She did not call Eugenia. She called Denise. Denise came in 22 minutes. She drove from East Point in Saturday morning traffic, and she walked through the front door with her keys still in her hand and said, "Where?" Camille took her to the basement. Denise stood in front of the open safe for a long time without saying anything. This was unusual for Denise. Denise always said something. "You never knew about this," Denise said. It was not a question. "No," Camille said. "And the only other key to this house is Eugenia's." "Yes." Denise looked at the safe. She looked at her sister. What was in it? "I don't know yet," Camille said, "but I'm going to find out." Denise sat down on the basement stairs. She was quiet for another moment. Then she said, "Before you do anything else, call Patricia Osei." Patricia Osei was the estate and financial fraud attorney who had handled Camille's firm's legal work for 3 years. Denise had met her once at a work event and had retained her name the way she retained everything useful. "It's Saturday," Camille said. "Call her anyway," Denise said. Camille called her anyway. Patricia Osei picked up on the second ring. Camille described what she had found in 4 sentences. Patricia asked 2 questions. Had Camille touched anything inside the safe? Had she contacted her mother-in-law? No to both. "Good," Patricia said. "Don't. I'll be there in an hour." She arrived in 50 minutes. She came into the basement, looked at the safe for 30 seconds, and said, "Tell me everything you know about your husband's finances." Camille told her. Joint checking, joint savings, his 401k, which she was the beneficiary of, his life insurance policy, which she was also the beneficiary of, $750,000 through his firm. His salary, which deposited on the 1st and 15th of every month, consistent for 9 years. "Anything that didn't go through your joint accounts?" Patricia said. "His firm had a separate expense account for client entertainment," Camille said. "I never had visibility into that. I didn't need to. It was a business account." Patricia looked at her steadily. "How long have you been a forensic accountant?" 11 years. "Then you already know what I'm about to say." Camille did. She had known it since she stood up from the basement floor and dusted off her knees. She had been hoping she was wrong. She had 11 years of professional experience telling her she was not wrong. "Where do we start?" Patricia said. "The expense account. And then we go back as far as the records go."
It took Camille 6 days. 6 days of evenings and weekends, her dining room table covered in bank statements, her laptop running 3 tabs of financial records, her forensic accounting software doing what it was designed to do: find the money that someone believed they had successfully hidden. Marcus Washington had been careful. She would give him that. He had opened the separate account 6 years ago at a bank where he had no other accounts, a deliberate choice, a clean separation. He had funded it by redirecting a portion of his quarterly commission bonuses before they hit the joint account, close enough to his usual bonus amounts that Camille had never had reason to audit them. He had set up an automatic transfer on the 14th of every month, $4,200 to an account she was now tracing. 42 months of records, 2 years and 10 months of transfers before she was done. She added it up, $302,400, plus the $180,000 that had been in the safe, which she now had a basis for, because the cash withdrawals were there in the records, systematic, always under $10,000 to avoid bank reporting thresholds, over approximately 18 months. He had known exactly what he was doing. So had the person who had come into this house after his death and emptied that safe. Camille sat at her dining room table at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night with the full picture in front of her and felt, for the first time since she had found the safe, something sharper than grief. She had a name for the feeling. She had encountered it professionally in the faces of clients sitting across from her when the full shape of what had been done to them finally became clear. She picked up the phone and called Patricia. Patricia came back with what her investigator had found on a Friday morning. The account receiving the $4,200 monthly transfers belonged to Simone Hayes, 36, of Decatur, Georgia. Pediatric occupational therapist. No criminal record. No prior civil litigation. The account had been receiving the transfers for 6 years, consistent and uninterrupted, until the month Marcus died. Patricia also had, through the estate process, Marcus's phone records. Not the phone Camille had known about. The second phone, a prepaid device he had maintained for 6 years, the bill paid from the separate account, calls and texts to one number with consistent regularity. Simone Hayes's number. The safe, Patricia's investigator believed, contained the following, based on the felt lining impressions and the hook: a fireproof document box, a burner phone, and, based on the cash withdrawal patterns, approximately $180,000 in currency. All of it was gone. "We need to talk about Eugenia," Patricia said. "Yes," Camille said. "We do." "I want to be careful about how we approach this," Patricia said. "If she still has the money, we want to recover it. If she has already moved it, we need to know where. Either way, we do not give her the opportunity to prepare before we have documentation." "She came to this house 4 times since the funeral," Camille said. "I let her in, I made her tea, I sat with her while she talked about Marcus." She paused. "She was in this house 2 days after the funeral, before I went into the basement." Patricia wrote something on her legal pad. 2 days, she said. 2 days, Camille said. Eugenia Washington had a key to the house because Marcus had given it to her 7 years ago when they bought the place. In case of emergency, he had said. Camille had agreed. It had seemed like the right thing. Eugenia had used that key 6 times in 11 years, as far as Camille could account for. Twice when they were on vacation and Eugenia had watered the plants, once when a package needed to be received, and 3 times since Marcus died. The first time was 2 days after the funeral. Camille had been at her mother's house that day. Eugenia had texted to ask if she could come by to pick up some of Marcus's things, a watch, some books, things she wanted to keep close. Camille had said of course, and had not given it another thought. She was giving it a great deal of thought now. She pulled up the text message on her phone and read it 3 times. She thought about the timing, 2 days after the funeral, while Camille was 45 minutes away. She thought about how long it would take to go into a basement, open a safe you already knew the combination to, remove the contents, and leave. Not long. Not long at all. She forwarded the text message to Patricia without comment. Patricia responded in 4 minutes. "This is enough to begin. Are you ready?" Camille thought about 11 years of Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings and birthday phone calls, and a woman who sat at her kitchen table and cried for her dead son, knowing exactly what that son had done, and exactly what she herself had done 2 days after his funeral. "Yes," she typed back. "I'm ready." Patricia advised against it. She said they had enough without it. that direct contact with Simone could complicate the legal process, that it was better to let the investigation handle it. Camille listened to all of this and then said, "She has been receiving $4,200 a month for 6 years. She is either complicit or she is also a victim. I need to know which one before this goes any further, and I need to know from her." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I cannot advise this, but I understand it. If you're going to do it before we file anything." Camille called Simone Hayes on a Tuesday evening. The phone rang twice. A woman answered with a warm, professional voice, the voice of someone who answered calls from unknown numbers without concern because she had no reason to be concerned. "My name is Camille Washington," Camille said. "I am calling about a man you know as Marcus Washington. He was my husband. He died 3 weeks ago, and I believe you have been in a relationship with him for 6 years." The silence on the other end was total. "He told me he was widowed," Simone said finally. Her voice had changed entirely. "He said his wife died of a brain aneurysm 4 years before we met. He said he had never remarried. He said—" She stopped. "He wasn't widowed," Camille said. "We were married for 11 years. I found the account he was using to send you money. I found the second phone. I found his safe." Another silence. "The safe," Simone said slowly. "He mentioned a safe once. He said it was for emergency documents. He never told me where it was." "Someone emptied it 2 days after his funeral," Camille said, "while I was not in the house." Simone was quiet for a long moment. "I have everything," she said. 6 years of texts and emails and photographs. I have a letter he wrote me that he left at my apartment 8 months ago. I kept everything because I keep everything." Another pause. "I did not know you existed. I want you to hear me say that directly. I would not have done any of this knowingly." Camille listened to this. She let it sit. "I believe you," she said, "and I need your help." Simone Hayes drove to Patricia Osei's office the following Thursday with a banker's box. Inside, printed screenshots of 6 years of text messages organized by month, 63 photographs, 41 emails, bank statements showing the $4,200 monthly deposits, a lease renewal co-signed by Marcus Washington, using his real name, not a false one, as a reference. The letter he had left at her apartment 8 months ago, handwritten on plain paper, in which he described his plans to leave his current life behind and build something real with her. Current life, that was what he had called it, his current life. Camille read that phrase and set the letter down and did not pick it up again. Patricia went through the box for 2 hours. When she was done, she looked at both women, Camille on one side of the conference table, Simone on the other, and said, "This is more than enough. This is everything." Simone looked at Camille. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. I'm sorry anyway." "I know you are," Camille said. They did not become friends, but they shook hands when the meeting ended. It was a firm, deliberate handshake, the handshake of 2 women who have been wronged by the same person and have decided, each in their own way, that they are not going to let that be the thing that defines them. Patricia asked Simone to walk them through the relationship. She did, steadily, without hesitation. 6 years ago, a professional development conference in Buckhead. Marcus had introduced himself, mentioned he was widowed, asked if he could take her to dinner. She had said yes. He had been attentive and specific and present in the way of a man who gave his full attention to the person in front of him. She had noticed that. She had thought it was rare. 8 months in, he had told her he was falling in love with her. 4 years in, he had talked about them living together. He had reasons why it hadn't happened yet. Work complications, a lease issue, a timing problem that was always just a few months from resolving. She had been patient. She was a patient woman.
8 months ago, the letter. He had left it on her kitchen counter while she was at work. He said he was going to make a change. He said he was going to stop doing the thing that was keeping them from moving forward. He did not name the thing. She had not asked him to name the thing because she had not known there was a thing to name. She had believed he was talking about his work schedule, his habit of overcommitting to clients, the careful life of a man who moved slowly. She had waited. He had not made the change. Then he died. She had found out he was married 4 weeks after his funeral, when his wife called her on a Tuesday evening. Camille listened to all of this and thought about the letter on her kitchen counter 8 months ago. She had not known about the letter. She had not known about Simone. She had known 8 months ago that Marcus was a good husband who coached basketball on Thursdays and made coffee on Saturday mornings and remembered their anniversary without a reminder. She had known a performance. She was done performing her grief for it.
Camille called Eugenia on a Saturday morning and asked her to come to the house. She said she needed help going through some of Marcus's things. She said she wasn't ready to do it alone. She said the words a grieving daughter-in-law would say, and she hated every one of them. And she said them anyway, because she needed Eugenia in this house, at this table, before Patricia filed anything. Eugenia arrived at 11. She came through the front door with a casserole dish covered in foil. She had brought food because she always brought food, because warmth and food were the tools she used to make people trust her. And Camille now understood this the way she understood everything, in evidence. She set the casserole on the counter. She hugged Camille. She smelled like cocoa butter. Camille led her to the kitchen table. On the table was a manila folder. "Sit down, Eugenia," Camille said. "I need to show you something." Camille opened the folder. She did not speak as she placed each document on the table. She had learned this in her professional life. Let the evidence do the work. Let the other person look at it before you say anything. Let them understand what they are looking at before you give them the opportunity to construct a response. The bank statements first. 6 years of $4,200 monthly transfers to an account in Decatur. Then the cash withdrawal records. 18 months of systematic withdrawals, always under $10,000, totaling $180,000. Then a photograph Patricia's investigator had pulled. Eugenia's car in the driveway of this house, time-stamped 48 hours after Marcus's funeral, while Camille had been at her mother's house in East Point. Then the text message, Eugenia asking to come by and pick up some of Marcus's things, while Camille was not home. Camille set the last document on the table and sat down across from her mother-in-law and waited. Eugenia looked at the documents for a long time. Her expression moved through several things: recognition, calculation, something that Camille might have called shame if she were feeling charitable, and she was not feeling charitable. "He was my son," Eugenia said, finally. "Yes," Camille said, "and I was your daughter-in-law for 11 years." Eugenia looked at the table. "How long did you know?" Camille said. A long silence. 4 years, Eugenia said. Camille had expected this answer. She had run the numbers and arrived at approximately this answer 3 days ago. Having it confirmed was not a relief. It was the specific weight of a thing you knew and hoped you were wrong about. 4 years, she said. You knew for 4 years, and you sat at my table, and you let me love him. Eugenia did not respond. "Where is the money, Eugenia?" Eugenia told her. It took 2 hours. Some of it Camille already knew. Some of it she had suspected. Some of it, the full texture of 4 years of knowing and choosing silence, was worse than she had been prepared for. Marcus had told Eugenia about Simone 4 years ago. He had not presented it as a confession. He had presented it as a problem he was handling, a situation that had gotten complicated, something he was going to resolve. He had asked his mother not to say anything to Camille. Eugenia had said she needed to tell Camille. Marcus had said he would end it before the new year. He had not ended it. He had said the same thing the following year. Eugenia had believed him each time, or had chosen to believe him, which was not the same thing. The safe. Marcus had told her about the safe 2 years ago. He had given her the combination. In case something happens to me, he had said. He had not specified what something might mean. When something happened, when Eugenia got the call on a Wednesday morning that her son had died on the way to the gym, she had understood immediately what she needed to do. She had come to the house 2 days after the funeral. She had taken the cash, the burner phone, and a letter Marcus had written to Simone. She had brought them back to her apartment in Augusta. She had burned the letter. She had put the cash in her closet. "You burned the letter?" Camille said. "I didn't want anyone to be hurt more than they already were," Eugenia said. Camille looked at her mother-in-law for a long moment. "You were protecting him," Camille said. "He was already dead. You were protecting his memory, and you were protecting yourself from being the woman who knew and said nothing." She paused. "You were not protecting me. You have never been protecting me." Eugenia did not argue with this. "My attorney will be in contact," Camille said. "I need you to leave my house."
Patricia Osei filed on a Monday. Theft of estate assets. $180,000 in currency removed from the marital home without authorization. Obstruction of estate administration. Destruction of estate documents, specifically the letter. Accessory after the fact to financial fraud. The 6 years of knowledge, the silence, the active concealment after Marcus's death. Patricia also filed a petition with the estate court for full disclosure of Marcus Washington's separate financial accounts, citing documented evidence of a parallel financial life maintained for 6 years. This filing triggered an automatic hold on the estate. Additionally, and this was the move that Camille had suggested and Patricia had agreed was correct, Patricia sent a letter to Marcus's life insurance carrier notifying them that the estate was under active fraud investigation and requesting a review of the beneficiary designation and the policy terms. "The insurance company is going to delay," Patricia told her. "Let them," Camille said. "I'm not in a hurry. I have 11 years of patience." Patricia looked at her over her reading glasses. "You know that's not what most clients say at this stage." "I'm not most clients," Camille said. "I'm a forensic accountant who has been lied to for 6 years by her own husband and 4 years by her mother-in-law. I am going to get every dollar back, and I am going to take exactly as long as it takes." Patricia wrote something on her legal pad. "I like working with clients who understand the process," she said. Eugenia's attorney called Patricia 47 hours after the filing. His name was Gerald Fitch, a criminal defense attorney from Augusta who had practiced for 28 years and whose opening position was that his client was a grieving 70-year-old woman who had made decisions under extreme emotional duress following the sudden death of her only son, and that the characterization of her actions as criminal was both legally and morally overreaching. Patricia listened to this for 90 seconds. Then she said, "Your client had the combination to that safe for 2 years before her son died. She drove 45 minutes to this house while her daughter-in-law was away, removed $180,000 in cash, a communication device, and a document, and then texted her daughter-in-law to say she had come by to pick up some personal items. She then concealed the cash and destroyed the document. She did all of this within 48 hours of her son's funeral. The emotional duress argument requires your client to have been impaired in her judgment. What I have is evidence that she was extremely clear in her judgment, clear enough to time her visit, clear enough to destroy evidence, and clear enough to lie about what she had done. So I am happy to discuss terms, but I am not going to discuss characterization." Gerald Fitch asked for 2 weeks to advise his client. Patricia said she would give him 1.
The life insurance carrier sent a letter 10 days after Patricia's notification. They were conducting a routine review of the policy in light of the estate fraud investigation. The review would take 60 to 90 days. Payment of the $750,000 death benefit was suspended pending the outcome. Camille read the letter at her kitchen table and set it down. She had expected this. Patricia had warned her this was possible. She was not panicking because she had 3 months of household expenses in savings and her own income, and she had always, methodically, built a cushion for things she did not know were coming. Marcus had known this about her. He had counted on it, she realized now. He had known she would be fine financially if something happened to him, which had perhaps made it easier for him to redirect money to another account for 6 years. She had always been fine. He had always known she would be fine. She was going to need to think about that at some point, what it meant that he had used her competence as permission to deceive her. But not today. Today she had work to do. She opened her laptop and went back to the financial records.
Gerald Fitch came back in 9 days, 1 day ahead of Patricia's deadline. His client was prepared to return the full $180,000 in exchange for a reduced charge and a sentencing recommendation. Patricia said she would discuss reduced charges with the prosecutor, but she was not in a position to make promises about sentencing. That was the court's decision. She could agree that Eugenia's voluntary return of the assets would be documented and presented at sentencing as evidence of cooperation. Gerald Fitch consulted with his client. He called back the following morning. Eugenia Washington delivered a banker's box to Patricia Osei's office on a Thursday afternoon. Inside, $180,000 in bundled currency. A handwritten inventory in Eugenia's handwriting listing the contents she had removed from the safe, and a signed statement acknowledging that she had known about Marcus's relationship with Simone Hayes for 4 years prior to his death and had not disclosed this information to Camille Washington. Patricia called Camille after Eugenia left. "It's all here," Patricia said. Camille was at her office. She was in the middle of a client file. She set down her pen. "All of it?" she said. "All of it," Patricia said. She even counted it before she handed it over. Every dollar. Camille sat for a moment with the phone pressed to her ear. "Good," she said. Then she picked up her pen and went back to work. The insurance company's review concluded 63 days after Patricia's notification. The finding, Marcus Washington's life insurance policy was valid and properly maintained. The investigation pertained to his personal finances and did not affect the policy terms. Camille Washington, as the named beneficiary, was entitled to the full $750,000 death benefit. The check arrived on a Tuesday. Camille signed for it at the front door and took it inside and set it on the kitchen table and looked at it for a long moment. $750,000, the amount Marcus had designated for her. The amount that had been delayed for 63 days by an institution that was hoping she would find the process too complicated to continue. She had not found it too complicated. She had found it very simple. She had followed the money, as she always did, and the money had come home. She thought about what she was going to do with it. She had some ideas. None of them involved anything Marcus would have planned. She called her financial advisor. She had some decisions to make. Patricia presented the full financial accounting of Marcus Washington's estate on a Friday morning. Marital assets, the house, the joint accounts, the 401k, the recovered safe contents totaled $1.4 million after debts and legal fees. The life insurance added $750,000. The separate account Marcus had maintained in Decatur had been frozen as part of the estate investigation. Its remaining balance of $47,000 was returned to the estate and added to the marital assets.
The $302,400 that Marcus had transferred to Simone Hayes over 6 years could not be recovered. It had been spent, as Simone had lived on it and used it for rent and expenses, and had no knowledge that it was marital funds. Patricia had advised Camille on this early, and Camille had understood and accepted it. Simone had not known. Pursuing her would have been the wrong direction. Total recoverable assets, Patricia said, are $2.197 million. Minus legal fees, taxes, and estate costs, your net is approximately $1.9 million. Camille looked at the number on the page. He spent 6 years building a second life, she said, and his mother spent 4 years protecting it, and at the end of all of it, the money came back. It usually does, Patricia said, when someone follows it all the way.
Eugenia Washington was sentenced on a Thursday morning in Fulton County. 18 months with credit for cooperation and the voluntary return of assets. 3 years of probation to follow. Her attorney had argued for house arrest given her age and health. The judge had noted that house arrest was appropriate for people who had made impulsive decisions under duress, and that Eugenia Washington had made systematic decisions over a period of 4 years, sustained by deliberate choice, and had acted quickly and deliberately within 48 hours of her son's death to conceal evidence. The sentence was 18 months. Camille sat in the gallery and watched the proceedings with the same focused attention she brought to everything. Eugenia looked back once as the bailiff moved to escort her out. She looked directly at Camille. Her expression was the expression of a woman who had something to say and no longer had the standing to say it. The bailiff was waiting. Eugenia looked away first. The prosecutor had asked if Camille wanted to deliver a victim impact statement. She had thought about it for a week. She thought about what she could say. She could say that she had been deceived for 11 years by a man she had loved completely. She could say that his mother had watched her love him for 4 of those years, knowing what she knew, and had chosen silence every single time. She could say that she had sat at her kitchen table and made coffee for a woman who knew her husband was sending $4,200 a month to someone in Decatur and had never once thought to tell her. She could say all of that. She had written some version of it 3 times. In the end, she had said it once, in the kitchen, on the morning she had laid the documents on the table and asked Eugenia to leave. She had said what needed to be said to the person who needed to hear it. Saying it again in a courtroom for an audience was not something she wanted to do. It was not who she was. She declined to give a statement. She sat in the gallery and watched the sentencing, and when it was over, she stood up and put on her coat and walked out of the courtroom into a Thursday morning that was gray and cold and hers. On the drive home from the courthouse, Camille called a locksmith. She had the locks changed that afternoon: front door, back door, side entrance, the basement door. She stood in the doorway and watched the locksmith work and thought about the fact that she was keeping this house. She had considered selling it. She had walked through it in the weeks after Marcus died and thought about whether she could stay in the rooms where they had built their life together, now that she understood what that life had actually been. She had decided she could. The house was half hers. She had worked for it and paid for it, and it sat on a street she knew and had rooms that caught the afternoon light in a way she had always loved. She was not going to leave it because a dead man and his mother had made bad decisions inside it. She was going to change the locks. The locksmith handed her the new keys. She held them for a moment, the slight weight of them, the clean newness of metal that belonged entirely to her. She thanked him and went inside and closed the door. She stood in her hallway in the late afternoon light. The house was quiet the way it had been since Marcus died, but it was a different quiet now. It was her quiet. She had followed the money all the way to the end of it, and the money had come home, and the people who had taken things from her had been made to return them. She went to the kitchen and made coffee. Her mug, just her mug. She sat at the table with the afternoon light coming through the window and drank the coffee and did not look at the chair across from her. She was already thinking about what came next. Subscribe to Shattered Crown Stories TV. A new story drops every day. Justice is always served here.